Good evening. So we'll get it going. So firstly, let me invite today's speaker, Professor Vasant Shinde, and also Ms. Shinde today here on behalf of the Institute, the director and all our Institute members for his special set colloquium today. Some of you may remember almost exactly 13 years ago, a month less than 13 years ago, on the same date, he actually came and gave a talk. That time, I think he was joint director, Pune University, and talked something about similar topic, interdisciplinary science to the past, or something of that sort. So again, he's back here, and I would like to once again thank Professor Vivek Datar, who actually proposed the talk this time. And without taking more of your time and also speaker time, I invite Professor Datar to formally introduce today's speaker and also conduct rest of the proceedings. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Professor Shinde, for agreeing to come and give this colloquium. Let me say a few words. Of course, there's a lot of things which I will be fairly brief. So he's the former professor and vice chancellor of the Deccan College, postgraduate PG Research Institute, which is also a deemed university in Pune. And he was also the founding director general of the National Maritime Heritage Complex and Museum at Lothal. Right now, he is at Hyderabad. He is the CSIR Bhatnagar Fellow at the CCCM, that's the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology at Hyderabad. And of course, he's a world-renowned archaeologist and museum expert, one of the foremost in South Asia. He's also adjunct professor at a few institutions like IIT BHU, the IIT Hyderabad, and the Central University of Haryana. He's also advisor to Ministry of Port, Shipping, Waterways, Government of India, National Maritime Heritage Complex and Museum. So he started his career in Pune, University of Pune, where he did a BA in history and a master's in archaeology and allied area from Deccan College. So the place where he is his sort of workplace for quite a few years later. So that time, of course, it was attached to the University of Pune. Later, it became deemed to be university. He completed his PhD on proto-historic archaeology on early settlements in the central Tapi Basin. And then did postdocs at a few places, including the University of Cambridge, the International Center for Japanese Studies in Kyoto. And of course, he has been awarded some honorary PhD degrees by various places and so on. He has been teaching since 1982. He has guided something like 39 PhD scholars who have already completed their PhDs and several more in the pipeline. And many more in for MA, MPhil, and postgraduate degree, and so on, something like 55, a very large number of these students. So he has been in this field of archaeological research for about 43 years, and specializing in, of course, the proto-history in South Asia, maritime history, and done a lot of field archaeology work. He has also collaborated with various people in various places in the globe, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Cambridge, Oxford, and so on, and Japan, Seoul University, and so on, lots of things. So the list is pretty long. The thing which has made news recently is this paper in 2019, which came in the Cell journal, and it made lots of waves. It was a big collaboration, of course, but the much of the science was done here in India at the CCCM and in Rakhigarhi, I think. So, so this is, of course, he will talk about it. I will not have anything to say on that. He has also been the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Deccan College in 2008 to 2013, and then the VC for another 6 years from 2013 to 2019. And then, of course, he's the founder, director general of the National Maritime Heritage Complex at Lothal for 2 years from, 1.5 years from 2019 to 2021. So with this brief introduction, let me now request Professor Vasant Shinde to give this talk. All of us are looking forward to it.
So thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers, particularly Dr. Sorry, Dr. Vinay Datar, and also Dr. Suryanarayan. Am I right? Satyanarayan. I'm sorry. Also, the director of the institute and all of you. I'm happy to be back here. In fact, 13 years ago, I gave a talk in this. And also, we had a formal collaboration with TIFR, between TIFR and Deccan College, when Professor Vaya was working here. So we have very active collaboration between these two institutions. And TIFR are known in India for initiating this scientific, archaeological, discipline. In fact, the archaeological dating was started in fact at TIFR. Professor B.B. Lal, he was the founder of this, and Dr. D.P. Agrawal, he was also working here. And in 1974 or 75, it was shifted to PRL in Ahmedabad. So most of the archaeological sites, in fact, in the initial stage, they were dated from TIFR. So that is a big contribution that TIFR has made. So today, friends, I will be speaking about the research that I'm doing. I'm an archaeologist, and I have collaborated with this molecular biologist in CCMB. And we have done this, what is known as the archaeogenetic research for the first time in India. Two important researches were initiated in India. One is the archaeogenetic research, and the other one is what we call as the craniofacial, the 3D reconstruction of the ancient, particularly the Harappan people. So this is also done for the first time in the country. So the work that was published in Shale in 2019, and this is I think one of the 9 breakthrough researches identified by International Conference on Genomics in 2019. All over the world, in fact, they identified 9 breakthrough researches, and this research was one of them. So this research is identified, recognized by the scientific community all over the world. Can I have the next one? Now, there are some there are some basic issues in Indian history. Next. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So these were the important issues on which we have highlighted now because of the scientific research that we have done. So there was an Aryan migration or invasion issue. Even today, in fact, there are some scholars and some people in the country who still, in spite of the scientific research, who still believe that Aryans came from outside and they have invaded part of India. So also we had very little knowledge about the people who initiated important developments in South Asia, particularly the beginning of agriculture and the first urbanization that happened around 2600 BCE, almost 4600 years ago. So a lot of people thought that this was done by the people coming from outside. And also we had very little idea about how the genetic history or genetic signatures have spread all over South Asia, and along with that how the cultural elements also have traveled. For that also we had very little knowledge. Most of the hypotheses regarding Aryan migration and people coming from outside, now they were not based on any scientific research or scientific evidence. In fact, mostly they were based on the inference. And this was started, in fact, let me give the background. When the Britishers came here, they had given the impression to the whole world that we have come to this part of the world to educate these people, to civilize these people, because according to them, the Indians were barbaric and uncivilized. So the impression that they gave was that, this is the reason we have come here. And 1920-21, when the actual excursion started at these two iconic sites, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, these are the two sites which are now in Pakistan. So there, the remains of a very advanced civilization were excavated. And this type of advanced civilization was not really reported from any part of Europe also in the contemporary world. So they had a very difficult question then to justify their rule over India. But then they started saying that it's fine, that we know that there are evidences here. But the people who made this civilization, people who started agriculture here or who developed the civilization here, they came from the West. And that is how they started fostering the idea of the Aryan invasion very strongly. And a lot of Indian scholars also followed them, because nobody tried to generate any scientific evidence in this particular respect. Because of that, this particular idea continued. And now, of course, we have generated for the first time the scientific evidence in this respect. Now, when it comes to the Harappan civilization, of course, Harappan civilization has laid or has revealed the foundation of the urban civilization in this part of the world. But before the discovery of the Harappan civilization, most of the historians, particularly the British historians, they had muted the idea that the settled life in this part started much later compared to other parts of the world. And according to them, that the settled life here began around 600 BCE, not before that. And they say that there's a big gap in the history of South Asia. And they say that India jumps from Stone Age to the Stupa period or the Buddhist period. And there's a big void or big Vedic night in this in the history of South Asia. But because of the discovery of the Harappan civilization, this so-called gap was filled in one go. And now India boasts of a continuous history of almost 2 million years. The earliest stone tools discovered in South Asia are dated to around 2 million, that is 20 lakh. So from 20 lakhs to the present, we have a continuous history. So that is the most significant part of the discovery of the Harappan civilization. And the importance of Rakhigarhi. Now, before we started the work at Rakhigarhi, Rakhigarhi is located, in Haryana, in Hisar district of Haryana. And before the work that we started, Rakhigarhi was thought to be the maybe third largest Harappan city. The first was considered to be Mohenjo-daro, which is spread over an area of roughly 300 hectares. Second was Harappa, roughly 200 hectares. And Rakhigarhi was in the neighborhood of maybe 100 to 120 hectares. And the fourth one was Dholavira, which is in Kutch part of Gujarat. And Dholavira recently has been recognized as a World Heritage Site in the country. So that is the only Harappan site so far identified as the World Heritage Site. And the fifth one is the site of Ganiveriwala, which of course, that site is not excavated, but that site lies in Pakistan. So these were the, 5 Harappan cities identified. And, when we started the work at the site of Rakhigarhi in 2010-11, first 2 years we spent in calculating the total area. Scientifically, we used most of the latest geophysical instruments, methodologies for identifying the total area of the site. And the total area of the site comes to around 550 hectares, almost double the size of the so-called biggest Harappan city. So that is the important part of the site of Rakhigarhi. And secondly, we have found very early dates for the beginning of the Harappan culture here. In most of the dates for the beginning of the Harappan culture in Sindh or in Pakistan, they are not going beyond 4000 BCE. But here, in fact, there are half a dozen sites in the region around Rakhigarhi, which have yielded the dates of 6000 BCE for the beginning of the Harappan culture. And we have found very good evidence about which I'm going to speak, about the gradual transition. In the early phase, when the Harappan culture started, they were living in villages, in fact, small settlements. And gradually they were growing we have very good evidence about the gradual transformation of the culture. And then, maybe around, 2600 BC, it was transformed into urban phase. So that complete history of that, complete story of that can be now, identified at the site of Rakhigarhi with actual evidence. And thirdly, for the first time here, we have identified who are the Harappan people. And we have succeeded in extracting DNA from these skeletal remains. Fortunately, the Harappans used to bury the dead bodies, and they had a separate graveyard. So we have excavated, large number of Harappan skeletal remains from these, and a lot of these skeletal remains, were investigated, scientifically, and we have found the, evidence of the Harappan DNA. Also, the entire research about the archaeogenetic study that we undertook at site of Rakhigarhi. Now that was planned by the Indian scientists. So Deccan College being the largest institute for the archaeological research, we initiated this particular project in 2010-11, and the responsibility of carrying out scientific excavation was taken up by the by Deccan College. And there were also half a dozen other universities in the country who joined us, mostly the archaeology departments. And in CCMB, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology in Hyderabad, some scientists who were working in ancient DNA, they also joined us for this particular research. So, this is how the research was organized. So it was truly a multidisciplinary and multi-institutional research that we developed. So, in fact, we excavated the remains in 2015. 2017, we had done the entire analysis, but we did not publish that intentionally because I realized that suppose we publish, because the entire research was done by Indian scientists, Indian archaeologists, and we were confident that perhaps the European scientists or archaeologists or even American, they will raise some doubts about our methodology, or about, maybe they will say that this thing is not done, that analysis is not done. So what we did, in fact, we made 3 samples, 3 libraries of the samples. One, of course, we analyzed in India, in CCMB and other places in Hyderabad and Bangalore. And second one library was sent to Seoul National University, with whom we were collaborating, the Seoul National University Medical College, which has got one of the finest forensic science departments. So we sent the samples to them and what we told that, you don't have to carry out any analysis. You have to do the only cross-checking for us. So for cross-checking, we sent to one, to Seoul National University. And third sample we sent to Harvard Medical School. And Harvard Medical School has perhaps the biggest ancient DNA lab in the world. And on this particular sample, the scientists from 16 different countries have worked in Harvard University. So same, we also requested them to give the cross-checking, the results of the cross-checking. And after we got the results from both these laboratories, which were complementary to the results that we had obtained, then only we published this research in 2019 and published in a very, very prestigious journal. Now, after the publication, there were 2 maybe important criticisms, that came up. One, some scholars say that this is a research which is more politically oriented, because BJP was in power, and some say that to please the BJP government, we have published this particular research. But let me tell you that this particular research was initiated in 2006 and 7 at the site of Farmana, which is very small site close to Rakhigarhi. And there, we excavated a very large part of the cemetery. And one of the objectives that we had at Farmana was to extract DNA and identify the people. But because of our maybe, lack of maybe understanding about the research methodology, and, we were not prepared for the, ancient DNA research that time. We miserably failed that time. And later, when we came in contact with the Korean scientists, they suggested that you have to do some slight modification in your approach, and that we did in fact at the site of Rakhigarhi, and there we succeeded. Suppose we had got the results in 2008-9, which would have published in 2009 or 10, the results would have been the same. This result cannot be changed. Even the data that we have produced at Rakhigarhi, that is in public domain. Anybody can recheck that data. So nobody can play with the scientific data. That is one thing. So this criticism has no standing. And the second criticism is that we have the DNA from only one skeletal remain. And on the basis of that, how we can generalize that. But DNA is like checking rice, whether rice is cooked or not. We pick up one grain of rice and taste. So DNA research is like that only. Even if you find 100 samples, we are going to get the same result. So even if you have the DNA from one skeletal remain, it is very, very important. And that has now is changing the perspective, understanding about early Indian history. So this is very, very important research that we have carried out. Now, those who fostered the idea of the Aryan invasion, one of the very well-known archaeologists, Sir Mortimer Wheeler, British archaeologist, he worked at Harappa. He excavated the Harappan cemetery, and these are the skeletal remains that were found in fact in the upper street at Mohenjo-daro. And according to Wheeler, these are the people, the Harappan people, who were killed by the invading Aryans. So that was the evidence in fact he put forth to foster the idea of the Aryan invasion. But later in fact these skeletal remains were studied by physical anthropologists from USA, Kenneth Kennedy. He studied these skeletal remains scientifically, and he did not find any injury marks on the bodies of these skeletal remains. And he came across, he proposed two hypotheses. He said that either these people died maybe because of suffocation, or they died because of some epidemic happening that time. So suffocation theory is very important because most of the skeletal remains, they were found in the flood deposit. And the river Indus has a history of floods. In fact, when the excavation was carried out at Mohenjo-daro, they have encountered three important events of floods, very severe floods. So two floods happened when the Harappan economy was booming. In fact, they had developed already in the urban stage, and economy was very strong. So they could immediately rebuild the city twice. But the last event happened in fact maybe around 2000 or 1900 BC, when the Harappan economy has started declining. And that time they could not rebuild the city, so they had to leave. So these may be the people, the skeletal remains of which are found in the flood deposit. These are the people who may have died in fact in that flood. So this is not the killing of the people. This is not the evidence as Wheeler has mentioned. So this was a very flimsy evidence that was put forth by Wheeler. So as far as the people are concerned, I think we have no idea about who are the hunter-gatherers. One hypothesis that maybe the hunter-gatherers may be originated in Africa, and from there in fact they started moving in different parts of the world. So that is the hypothesis so far, but we do not have scientific evidence for that. But in India, at least the beginning of the hunting-gathering stage begins around 2 million years, that is 20 lakhs. There is a site called Atirampakkam in Tamil Nadu, and there is one site called Rivat in Pakistan near Peshawar. These two sites have provided very strong evidence about the beginning of the Stone Age culture in South Asia, and there we have found very solid dates for the beginning. And then of course this particular event continues, and the most important event happened around 7000 BC in Indian subcontinent. Around 7000 BC, the people have started agriculture, and the hunter-gatherers in fact who came to Indian subcontinent maybe around 12,000 years ago. These are the people who began agriculture maybe around 7000 BCE in Indian subcontinent. And then of course the early farmers, they started, maybe, developing into, very complex and very advanced cultures. And at one stage, the same culture or the same development that started around 7000 BCE, that was culminated into the formation of the Harappan culture around 6000 BCE. And, we have three phases of the Harappan culture. One is called the early or the formative stage from 6000 BCE to 2600 BCE, in which people were mostly living in villages, small and big villages. We have the evidence for that. And then, of course, there is a gradual growth happening in that. And then around 2600 BC, they were transformed into urban phase. So that urban phase is called the Harappan civilization. We use the two terms. One term is Harappan culture, and the other term is Harappan civilization. And the urban phase of the Harappan culture is called the Harappan civilization. So that starts, starts from 2600 BCE and continues up to 1900 BCE. And after that, of course, decline starts. And then, of course, the culture has survived in some kind of decadent form till 1500 BC in some area and 1300 BC in some area. So this is, the history of the Harappan culture in brief. Now, before the research that we started, in fact, in the Saraswati region, I'm going to show the Saraswati region also. It was thought that, the beginning of agriculture happened somewhere in Middle Asia, in fact, or Mid Asia, or the West Asia. And from there, the agricultural communities or the agriculture technology, in fact, began to spread, disperse in different parts of the world. It was believed that, maybe these one stream went to Europe, one stream went to Central Asia, and one stream came to South Asia. But now, we have evidence, in fact, from different parts of the world. And now it is becoming clear that maybe around 7000 BCE or 7000 or 8000 BCE, the agriculture was introduced in different parts of the world. And the development was independent. It was not that, it happened at one place and then, dispersed to other places, not like that. It was happening in different places. So we have found one, area of the development of agriculture in South Asia. We also have one, in fact, very distinct area of the development of agriculture in West Asia, in Egypt, and also in China. But right from the beginning, people of, different, regions, they had started developing trade contact. And right from the beginning of agriculture, there was a movement of the people from one region to another region, mostly for maybe acquiring, suitable raw materials or for distributing the finished goods that they were producing. For that reason, in fact, they started developing contact. So also you can see it, but this is the Harappan region. The Harappans had spread on a very large area, roughly 1.5 million square kilometer area they had occupied, which is almost double the size of Pakistan. Then, very small, of course, this in Oman, in Bahrain also, some, cultures, were there. But then, there is a small, Mesopotamian civilization. The area that was occupied by Mesopotamian civilization was very small compared to the Harappans. And beyond that, of course, there is an Egyptian civilization. So all these, cultures, civilizations were, contemporary to each other. They had very strong connection, strong contact with each other. And a lot of movement, in fact, was happening between this region, maybe in the 3rd millennium BC. So that is very important. Now here you can see that, the close-up of the total Harappan area here. So we have the sites, in fact, in Jammu and Kashmir, Harappan sites, and down south up to Maharashtra border, we have sites. Then from Alamgirpur in UP, in the western part of UP, up to the Makran coast, we have Harappan sites all over. And so far, we have discovered nearly 2000 Harappan settlements here. Now, one misunderstanding about the people is that every Harappan settlement is a city. That is not the case. We have only identified, you can see the location of the Harappan cities. There are only 5 Harappan cities. We have also identified one dozen at least, 1.5 dozen rather, Harappan towns. And then, of course, the rest are in different categories. We have a large number of agricultural settlements, we have Harappan ports, we have manufacturing centers, and even small temporary settlements. So these are the different categories of the Harappan sites we find. And here you can see the location of these important sites like I was talking about this site and also about Harappa. These, Harappa is not ancient name. This is a modern name. But usually in archaeology, we name the culture after the site, where the culture is identified. So the identification of the Harappan culture was done at the site of Harappa. Therefore, it is called Harappan culture. It is also called, there are different terms also, Indus culture, Indus Valley civilization, etc. These are the different terms used by different scholars. And also, this area is very important. The Harappans mostly, flourished between the Indus and the parallel river called, today it is called Ghaggar and Hakra. But this river is identified as the Rigvedic Saraswati. So between Saraswati and Indus River, most of the sites are located. A very, very important region. As far as the river Saraswati is concerned, I think right from, this is the earliest map in fact prepared by a Dutch cartographer in 1746 during the Mughal era. And he has mentioned this particular river parallel to Indus as the Saraswati River. So right from 1746, efforts were made. And today, of course, a lot of scientific studies have been carried out. There's a clear-cut mention about the origin of the river in the Rigvedic text, and it is mentioned that this river originates in the Himalayas. Himalaya is mentioned, and also it is mentioned that it flows through deserts and also meets the sea at some stage. So a lot of geologists have worked, a lot of hydrologists have worked, and recently the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, they also have done the scientific analysis of the photography imagery that they have, and they have identified clearly the dry course of river Saraswati. So here in fact, in Rigvedic text, two important rivers are mentioned. One, of course, is river Saraswati, that is the main river, and one of its major tributaries is called Drushadwati. So that also is identified. So today, of course, the river which flows, with the part of the river which is in India, it is called Ghaggar. And the moment it enters into Pakistan, it is called Hakra. And then, of course, in Pakistan, it comes down to Kutch part of Gujarat and meets the sea. And the Drushadwati river, today it is called Chautang River. But this is actually the, very important, Rigvedic river. And the site of Rakhigarhi is located in the confluence, in fact, between Saraswati and Drushadwati, the most important and fertile regions of the Harappans. You can see, the river is not flowing. It is a dry river, but you can see there are important sites like Rakhigarhi is located very close to that, Banauli, Kalibanga, and we have large number of settlements here, but these are the important sites which have been excavated in this region. You can see, we have discovered nearly 2,000 settlements so far, out of which nearly 2/3 of the Harappan settlements are located in the Saraswati Basin. So that shows the importance of this particular river. There are a couple, maybe there are a few reasons for that. One is that, this is a very, very fertile region. I think, Saraswati Basin is considered to be one of the most fertile units, in fact, in the world. Because of that, because of the fertile nature of this region. Secondly, there is a lot of water, easily, water is available. It is believed that, the Saraswati River is flowing underground, and the government of Haryana is making efforts, in fact, to, regenerate the, old course of river Saraswati. So that effort is also happening. So it is well watered, and unlike Indus, is very ferocious river. It gets very, severe and frequent floods, because of which, we don't find a lot of settlements located along the banks of river Indus. Even today, I've visited Mohenjo-daro and that area, and I've seen, in fact, there are very sporadic settlements along the bank of river Indus, whereas we don't see such kind of events happening in the Saraswati region. And Saraswati has, number of tributaries also, which are very safe. Because of this reason, there are a lot of settlements here. So this is the site. What you are seeing here, in fact, is a mound. This is the artificial mound. We call this archaeological site. From the beginning of settled life, particularly, most of the archaeological sites are in the form of mounds. The height of that varies, of course, from site to site, depending upon how long the site was under occupation and how many people live there. So we have this type of artificial mounds which we identify, we discovered. And then, of course, this is the site of Mehrgarh, which has got almost 13-meter deposit, very thick deposit, because this site was under occupation from 7,000 BCE to almost 3,000 BCE. So it has got a long, very long, lengthy sequence. So these type of sites are located, and then we excavate the sites, and we find different levels. In different levels, we find material culture of that particular period. These levels represent different generations at the site. So we record them systematically. And here, for the first time, the traces of the beginning of agriculture were reported in 1973. And at the same site, in fact, now one can also find the gradual growth of the culture. The culture found in the lowermost levels, 7,000 BCE, very small culture. And they had just begun the life. And gradually one can see the transition from 7,000 BCE up to the development of the Harappan culture at this particular site. So this is a very, very important site. And at this site, you can see some of the evidence. These are the people who started domestication. They started domesticating animals. So, this cattle, then sheep and goat, and even dog. These were the animals which were domesticated. Apart from the domesticated animals, of course, domesticated husbandry, they also had a lot of, they also used to hunt a lot of wild animals also for subsistence. So this is the beginning of that. Then these are the people who started cultivating, wheat and barley. We have the physical remains of that. So this is the beginning of the culture in this part. So we have the evidence of barley and actual, charred remains of wheat grains. So we know that, these are the people who started, this type of, cultivation. They also developed some tools, which are required for maybe processing food and all. So these type of tools were introduced by these people. Then this is the earliest evidence of, a ceremonial burial in the Indian subcontinent, dated to 7,000 BC, found in the earliest levels. So the people used to bury the dead body within the settlement. And perhaps, we don't know why, what is the reason behind that. Perhaps they loved people so much that they did not want people to go away from them. That may be one of the reasons. But they always believe in second life, because along with the dead body, you can see a small container, because in the earliest level, pottery was not produced. They used some, maybe baskets, which were coated with mud. So that type of containers were used. So you can see one container along with that. And also you can see a lot of beads. So these are the beads found on the body. So they believed in second life. Because of that, these things were buried along with the dead body. So maybe they must have kept food here, and also the ornaments. Sometimes we find their tools also. So this is the kind of evidence we find. And this particular custom has continued from 7,000 BCE to 2,500, 2,600 BCE in the subcontinent. So these are the people who by using very primitive technology, they started producing this type of ornaments. So the technology was rudimentary, in fact, in the early level, but it gradually was getting refined. And by 2,600 BC, the same technology was fully refined. And what is interesting that we always see that the Indian knowledge system we talk about, the beginning of the Indian knowledge system goes back to 7,000 BC. That was perfected by 2,600 BC. And then after perfection, that knowledge system has continued till today. A lot of communities in South Asia, they're using the same Indian knowledge system even today. And this is how, this is a continuity. I mentioned that, right from the beginning, they started developing contacts with different regions. And this hypothesis is based on actual evidence. You can see, in fact, these are the some of the remains of the ornaments found at Mehergarh. So, these cells, they have been scientifically studied. The composition of these cells have been studied. And it was found that, these beads have come from Karachi coast. And Karachi from Mehergarh is roughly 1,200 kilometers. So this shows the contact. And also, perhaps the early farmers, they started crossing sea also. Because this particular material, what is known as the mother of pearl, which was used for ornament purpose. Now, this particular material has come from Oman. So they have crossed seas. Oman is roughly 2,000 kilometers away from Mehergarh. So they started developing long distance trade. So this is reflected in the archaeological data, and also in the genetic data. Also, we have the reflection of that. This is the beginning of the settlement. They started developing very small, maybe interconnected mud houses in the early stage. Then they gradually developed the ceramic traditions around 6,500 BCE. This kind of ceramic was developed by them. And then, of course, this is the evidence from the northwest part. And then I come to the site of Rakhigarhi, where we have much more convincing evidence about the transition and gradual growth of the Harappan technology as well as the material culture here. So Rakhigarhi, now you can see this is a dry river bed of Drushyadwati, located in the confluence. And it is represented by different mounds or different localities. So we have identified these are the 7 localities which were identified by the Archaeological Survey of India when they carried out some work between 1997 and 2000. And then, when we started, we discovered 2 more localities. So there are 9 localities now. So we have reconstructed the entire site. You can see in fact, we have, by using the latest geophysical instruments, we have prepared the maps of the site. So what you are seeing in fact, the site was very, very, extensive. This was the part of the settlement, but major part of the settlement today is under modern occupation. People are sitting, on top of the ancient, part. Only, a part of the settlement, maybe, 1/10 of the settlement is visible today. And this part, which is visible, that is now protected as the nationally protected site. It is a national monument now. So these are the maps that we have prepared. You can see now from this, you can see this, this is a part of the settlement, but it is under modern occupation. Nearly 10,000 people are living on the major part of the settlement. And this part still quite extensive, almost 30 to 40 hectare is still visible. And this part is protected by the Archaeological Survey of India as a national monument. So we carried out excavation in this part. So this is the area where people were actually living. This is their living area. And the cemetery is not visible, but cemetery is roughly 1 kilometer away from here. And that is located in the plain. We don't have a mound there as such. It is just a plain landscape in which we find the cemetery. Part of the settlement which is visible here, you can see, at least from here, from this picture, at least you get to know the nature of the ancient settlements. This is how the settlements are found. They're always, the color of the soil is always whitish. In Maharashtra particularly, we have pandri. In fact, in every village, we have this a small maybe hillock called pandri, and whenever it is a pandri, that means it is ancient site. So in Haryana also, we have same kind of evidence found. So we carried out one of the important objectives that we had. We have not really excavated the site on large scale because we were interested in only certain maybe research problems only. One problem that we had mind was that what is the beginning of the Harappan culture and how the culture has transformed, in what form in fact it has transformed. So that was one of the important questions that we had. So you can see that on the highest point of the mound, we took one trench, which one excavation area, which was taken down to the natural level. And here the deposit is 23 meters. So thickest deposit found at any Harappan site. And you can see here, we have reached to the natural level here. And, from here onward, in fact, we have studied the transition of the Harappan culture, which is very well reflected. So in the lowermost levels, what we find, in the lowermost levels, we have this type of pits. You can see small pits, and they are in clusters. So these are actually what we call them as pit dwellings. These are the clusters. One family may have one, maybe own, maybe 4 or 5, maybe pits. And the function of each pit, maybe the larger one, you can see this is the largest among these clusters. The larger one may have been used for maybe living purpose. The smaller one may have been for maybe cooking or storage purpose. So that is the kind of evidence we find. So the beginning is very, very modest in the maybe around 6000 BCE. So you can see actually the remains of the plaster. In some, we have also fireplace inside. So this is how the clusters were used by the.
What would be the size of that?
The bigger one is 2.5 meters, the diameter of the bigger one. And the smaller, this type of, they are, between maybe 50 centimeter to 70 centimeter. So these are the actual, storage pits. And some of them were used as for, maybe cooking purpose also. So this is the kind of evidence we find in the lowermost levels. In the next level, in the early level, of course, they are underground. We call them as pit dwellings. Underground they were living. In the next level, they started building on the ground. But, same kind of structure, maybe nature of the structure has not changed. Circular structures were built by the Harappans in the second stage. In the next stage, now you can see part of the rectangular structure that is excavated here. So in the third stage, maybe proper rectangular or square structures were built by the Harappans. And they also started building or manufacturing the building material in the form of mud bricks, which are used for the constructing of the wall. Also, they have fire bricks also, which are used for building bathrooms and toilets. So that is the kind of evidence we find. And also, they started building this tandoor. By the way, chicken tandoor is the delicacy which was introduced by the Harappans. And these are the tandoors which were introduced. Yeah, two things, not only chicken tandoor, but typical Indian curry. The antiquity of Indian curry goes back to the Harappan times, and we have identified that, in fact, scientifically. In Farmana, we have found a lot of pots in the burials, and we have done the what is known as the residual analysis, because when something is kept in the earthen pot, it forms a thin layer inside. And that thin layer, remains intact. So when we found the spots, we scraped that material, we analyzed that material, and we found, the ginger, tamarind, turmeric, and also brinjal. These are the contents of the Indian curry. So on the basis of that, we say that, the antiquity of Indian curry goes back to the Harappan times. In the fourth stage, now you can see modicum of planning proper. This is the evidence from the Farmana site. Of course, we don't have large space, open at the site of Rakhigarhi, because Rakhigarhi is more, like a mound. But Farmana, we had a lot of space available for the excavation. So here, we have excavated large area, and now you can see that, there is a proper modicum of planning. This is around 2700 BCE. So you have structures on both sides. There is a big street here, maybe small street like that. And lastly, we find the full-fledged town planning. Of course, this is not from the site of Rakhigarhi, but this is from the site of Mohenjo-daro. So now we can see that full-fledged town planning has come into existence. So there is a gradual growth. So this clearly indicates that that people who started maybe very modest lifestyle, these are the people who are gradually growing and transforming. And at this particular stage, around 2500, 2600 BCE, they were transformed into urban phase. The similar story also is found in the ceramic. So this is the kind of ceramic, the earthen pots we find in the lowermost levels. The pottery is made, this is handmade pottery. It is not well finished. You can see the surface. It is not really, smooth surface. It is not well fired. So this is a hand model pottery found in the lowermost levels. Gradually it is changing. The color of the pottery is changing in the next level. Now, the pottery is made on slow turntable. And lastly, they started, producing pottery on fast wheel. And this concept has continued from Harappans till the modern times. So this is how the transition has taken place in certain material culture also. Then I come to the most important part. This is the archaeogenetic research that we initiated. Now, this picture is from Fargana. I mentioned that we have excavated a large cemetery, nearly 70 burials at Fargana. But the mistake that we did that we just followed the conventional method of excavation at Fargana. So we have not taken any precaution while excavating, because later we realized that the DNA is so sensitive. The modern DNA can get into ancient DNA easily, through breathing also. So that time, we have not taken precaution. Second mistake that we did, in fact, that we excavated nearly 70 burials at one and the same time. And third mistake that we did was we kept them open for two months almost. So during maybe when they are remain open for such a long period, maybe whatever DNA may have been there, that has completely slipped. And after that, we tried extracting DNA. So there were scientists from Japan and America, in fact, who came that time to extract DNA from the Harappan skeletal remains. But at the end, after 2 months, nothing was found. So it was a miserable maybe failure for us, in fact, here. But we have learned the lesson from that. And then, when we started the work at Rakhigarhi, maybe 2013-14, we started excavation at Rakhigarhi, the excavation of cemetery. And as I mentioned that, this is a cemetery area, which is in the field today. And here, we started, the excavation of cemetery on large scale, because this was one of our important objectives of the research. So we, took precaution to prevent any contamination. We started using this type of, disposable gowns, disposable hand gloves, even the masks, goggles, etc. Even the same tool, the tools which were used for excavation purpose. For one burial, the same tools were not used for the other burial. We use fresh tools for the other burial. So this is how the precaution was taken. And then, of course, this excavation was started. So these excavations are done by all of us, in fact. Our students do the excavation. We do employ, local people, but therefore maybe sifting soil and for cleaning purpose, but not for the excavation purpose. So this is done by, all of our students, and the excavation was, conducted in this. So we have taken precaution and to make sure that, there is no contamination. But when we started analyzing the data, when we analyzed the data, we found East Asian elements in the Harappan population. And there was no way, because the Harappans had no contact with Korea, Japan, or China at all, because there were no contemporary cultures. So then, later we realized that one of our students was from Korea, Kim. And in spite of taking all the precaution, his DNA got into Harappan DNA. But by the time we started, analyzing the DNA from Rakhigarhi, that time the genetic science had developed so much. Then we were able to separate ancient DNA and modern DNA by this time. So this is the type of burials that we find. We find a lot of burial goods inside. And we find mostly pots, sometimes they're ornaments, sometimes they're tools. And on the basis of the quality and the quantity of the burials, we try to understand the social status, maybe economic status, or the social status of the family. So this man particularly is maybe around 35 years old man. He may be from poor family, because he has only 3 pots or 4 pots in that. Then we also found some couple burials. These 2 died at the same time. And we believe, we wrote one paper saying that they may be husband and wife, or they may be brother and sister, died at the same time, because they were buried with same maybe honor in the common cemetery. So if their relations were not maybe accepted by the society, they would not have been buried in the common cemetery, and they would not have been given the same treatment as the other people were given. This is a close-up of that. But see the preservation condition. We don't find maybe flesh or any other organic matter, but the bones are in good condition here. So these two, maybe from rich family. You can see large number of pots along with inside. Also, we did a lot of sampling. In fact, when we started working with the Korean scientists, Koreans they did for the first time identify DNA from the parasite eggs that they recovered from ancient dead bodies. And from that, they were able to identify the DNA of the person. So here also we did the sampling, after the excavation. And we wanted to collect, this type of parasite eggs. In all of us, in fact, we have parasite eggs in our body. Everybody has, perhaps. And when we die, the body disintegrates, but the parasite eggs, remain, they survive. How long they survive, we do not know. At least for 600 years they survive, because Koreans have, detected them from the Korean mummies they found, which are around 600 years old. We did not find them, of course, in the Harappan burials. So here, what we did, we excavated nearly 60 burials at Rakhigarhi. We have not excavated all the burials at one and the same time. We changed our strategy. We targeted one burial at a time. We excavated the burial. We immediately documented the burial. And then, of course, we removed the bones, removed the samples, and transported the samples to Deccan College laboratory. So this is what we did, in fact. Because of that, we could succeed getting DNA from the Harappan people. So when we were packing the samples, we took the same precaution. And when they're brought to our laboratory in Deccan College for cleaning purpose, we took the same precaution, making sure that there is no contamination in the. So the method that we adopted for the scientific evidence, scientific examination. So as soon as the samples were brought to our laboratory, after cleaning, we carried out anthropological examination. We have done a detailed report of this, and we already published in this one in PLOS One. Then we have done the CT scanning. The CT scanning is done for the 3D reconstruction of the facial features. That is called craniofacial research. Then we also try this parasitology. There is a separate branch now called the paleoparasitology, which is developed in fact in Korea and some parts of Europe. We are also trying to develop this. So for that purpose, we collected samples, and then of course sampling was done for ancient DNA. And by undertaking this different scientific analysis, we can precisely talk about the health and diet of the people, even the percentage of maybe plant food and animal food in their diet. So all these analysis were done in fact at the site at Rakhigarhi. So we found nearly 60 burials, and then we started examining each and every burial. The condition is very bad, in fact, for the preservation of organic matter in South Asia. Even in West Asia also, the condition is not good. First, particularly the area in which we are working, there's a lot of moisture in the air, which is not good for the preservation of organic material. And also the soil is very bad. It is more acidic soil. The preservation is good, in fact, in alkaline soil, not in acidic soil. So we started examining, each and every skeletal remain that we excavated. We realized that, we have a bone called petrous bone, which is just here, in fact, near the ear. So that bone is considered to be most potent for the DNA. So we targeted that bones, in fact, we target even their tooth and, teeth and all, other parts also. In 59 burials, we did not find any DNA. And we thought that, that ultimately, we have to maybe, we have to stop this particular exercise because we are not going to get DNA from these skeletal remains, which are very old. And finally, this lady came to our rescue, in fact. We always consider this as a lady luck for us. So this was the last skeletal remain that we excavated. This lady is from maybe around 30 years old. She's from a very affluent family because you can see a number of pots, nearly 40 pots were found around her. So maybe her status, maybe either economic status or social status must be good in the society. And she was very beautiful because she has very sharp features. So we analyzed that, we found, DNA, and authentic DNA. And then, of course, as I mentioned that, that after we got the cross-checking from Korea and also from Harvard, then we published this particular research in 2019 in the most prestigious journal, science journal called Shell. And the title itself suggests, see, as I mentioned that, that scientists from 16 different countries have worked on this particular sample. So the title suggests an ancient Harappan genome lacks ancestry from steppe pastoralists or Iranian farmers. So it was believed that the so-called Aryans came from Central Asia, from the steppe region. From steppe region they came to Iran, and from Iran they came to South Asia. That was the hypothesis. We do not have the steppe genes or Iranian genes present in the Harappan population here. I mentioned about this. This is the recognition given by the International Conference on Genomics. They had identified 9 breakthrough researches, and Rakhigarhi research was on top of that. So what this research indicates? So we have used this, the genetic chronology to understand, the roots of the South Asian ancestry. And it took us back to almost 12,000 years, 10,000 BCE. So around 10,000 BCE, people were in hunting-gathering stage. So the hunter-gatherers somewhere, maybe near Iran, Afghanistan border, they split into 2 groups. One group went to Iran. As they went to Iran, in fact, and they reached, towards the Anatolian region, they started mixing with the Anatolian farmers here. The other group came to South Asia around 10,000 BCE. And when they started moving to South Asia, their genes started getting muted. And it formed into a very, very distinct genes around maybe 9,000 BCE. And those genes have continued from Harappans till from 9,000 BC to the Harappans, and from Harappans till to the modern people. So they are called the ancient ancestral South Asian genes, the distinct genes that we have found in South Asia. This is the, we call them AASI, and they developed around 12,000 years ago. Iranian and South Asian have common gene base because both of them are split from the same base. So naturally they have a common base. But once they split, then they started developing or mutating different genes. One also misunderstanding that the Central Asian population has R1A genes. That is a misunderstanding. And those scholars who believe that the Aryans came from outside, they always cite that Aryans had R1 genes, R1A genes. But now the research that we are doing, now these R1 genes is a very dominant gene in South Asia. And when the Harappans began to move towards the other parts, these genes started moving to that part. So that is the evidence that we are getting. So in Rakhigarhi sample, we found out that the Harappans were not carrying any genetic signatures from Iranian-related ancestry. This is extremely fascinating and indicative that agriculture in South Asia was invented and practiced by the indigenous population. The Iranians were not responsible for that. And this sets aside the previous belief that farming was brought by Neolithic Iranians. That is now settled forever. It is also evident that significant movement of Harappans was towards Central Asia. I will show you that we have also studied some remains from Central Asia and Iran also, and how first the Indians have started going that part, and later there is some kind of reciprocal movement happening after that. That I'm going to show there. So for the first time, suppose anybody believes that they were Aryans, so maybe we were the Aryans then, and we started going out. So we are developing that out of India theory now. They have not come from outside, but Indians have started going out. So that is a very, very significant clue that we are getting. Then you can see that genetically steppe introgression in South Asia has not happened until 1000 BCE. Furthermore, mixing with steppes was gradual and not sudden, thus reject the invasion or replacement of the local South Asian with the steppe. So this is a very, very interesting evidence that we are getting. Steppes have arrived to India and mixed with the local population and exchanged their genetic material, but not the ancestry, knowledge, and culture. We have, in fact, Indians have given to them. We have also observed that there was a great deal of variance due to differential mixing with the diverse local population. I'm going to come to that also. So we are ruling out a large-scale spread of farmers with Anatolian roots into South Asia. The centerpiece of this Anatolian hypothesis is that movement of people from West brought farming into this region, and with it, the Indo-European language. Since no substantial movement of people occurred, this is a checkmate for the Anatolian hypothesis. What we did, in fact, to check that, there is a site called Shari Sokta in Iran. This site is contemporary to the Harappan site at Rakhigarhi. And also there is a site called Gonur in Turkmenistan. That site also was contemporary to the Harappans. So the excavations carried out by the local archaeologists here, they found a lot of Harappan material there, indicating a strong contact between Harappans and this contemporary population. Also, we studied the DNA, because there also they found the skeletal remains. We studied the DNA of the people here of this. What we found that we found the Harappan genes present in these people, both the population, but not their genes present in the Rakhigarhi population. That means the Harappans started going out there first, and then people started coming in. So this is the evidence that we're getting. And there is a spread, in fact, large spread of the Harappan ancestry in Iran and also in Central Asia. And you can see, in fact, this was gradually spreading. In fact, you can see the spread happening over a much larger area and going from the Harappan region to Iran first, and from Iran to Central Asia. Also, what we did, in fact, we also carried out the DNA analysis of the modern population. We selected nearly 140 different groups present in South Asia, and we analyzed nearly 3,500 samples. So we collected samples from the different linguistic groups, Indo-Europeans, mostly in this part, the Dravidian-speaking people in this part, the Austro-Asiatic people living in Jharkhand and that part, Tibeto-Burman from northeast India, and also we have some people in which is called linguistic isolates. So we have also done the study of the modern population. We have included people from different religious groups also in this. And what we found that that most of the people today, the dominant genes of the people from Ladakh, Kashmir to Andaman Nicobar, and from Bengal to Afghanistan, most of us, no matter what religion, caste, or creed we follow, all of us are carrying the Harappan genes. That is the indication that we are getting from this particular study. So I'm also going to show you, in fact, how this spread must have happened in the Indian subcontinent. But this is a very, very important study that that all of us have more than 25 to 30% Harappan genes. So when we have 25 to 30% genes of one particular population, that means we are descendants of that particular population. So 25 to 30% we have the Harappan genes, and the remaining maybe 2% Iranian, 4% Central Asian, maybe 3% maybe West Asian, like that. Even Europeans also we find later. So that is a mixing happening because of the movement of the people right from the early stage. We also found some archaeological evidence. I excavated some sites in Mewar region of Rajasthan. So these sites are dated to around 2500 BCE. And we have found some material found at this, but in these sites, like these seals, this type of ceilings. Exactly, these type of ceilings are found in what is known as Bactria marginia region in Central Asia. So earlier it was thought that these type of seals have come from that part to this part. But now the evidence found in Central Asia is around 1800, 1900 BC old, whereas this evidence is around 2500 years old. So probably this evidence, this influence has started going from Mewar region to Harappans. Some more impressions. There are some Harappan letters printed, engraved on the pottery here. So started going in fact from not from here, but started going from the Indian subcontinent to that part. Then also we have identified different zones of the development of settled life in the Indian subcontinent. The earliest evidence, of course, where we have the earliest evidence of the settled life in this part from the site of Mehergarh, and this is the region in which we have studied. So, with the Harappan elements in fact, around from 7000 BCE, not exactly the Harappan, but the Indian elements, they started moving to this part. The second oldest evidence comes from the Mid-Ganga Basin, 6500 BC. From there, the influence started moving to the Mewar region around 4500 BC. And by 3000 BC, it has spread almost all over the Indian subcontinent. So this is how the gradual spread is recorded in their material culture also. And along with the material culture, people have also moved. So Harappans were not the only, it was not the only culture that flourished in the Indian subcontinent. A lot of maybe contemporary cultures, mostly the outside Harappan region, people have lived in the, in villages only, in rural format. Harappans were the only people who developed, in the urban status. But these people living in this part, they had very strong interaction, they contact with the Harappans. And that contact also, could be properly recognized how their movement was happening from here to, this way, and then to other parts of the Indian subcontinent. So except this, most of the people are derived from the same ancestry. We have the same ancestry. So the question that then one may ask that why do we have such a great diversity, such a great complexion in fact in the Indian subcontinent? We are perhaps India is considered to be an ethnic museum. The highest number of diversity is found. So diversity has nothing to do with the genetic history. It has to do, it happens because of the geographical condition, because of the climatic condition, because of the food habit, and how much percentage of the mixing was happening from different parts. For example, people from southern part of India, they look different from people from the northern part of India because their food habit is different, geography is different, environment is different. And these people, south of Narmada, these people have more mixing with Southeast Asian people and African people, whereas people north of Narmada, they have more mixing with the Iranians and Central Asians. Because of that, those people look different. Otherwise, genes or the DNA has nothing to do with that. And lastly, I come to the last part of the, of the research. Now, for the facial reconstruction, of course, we need complete sculptural remains. So this is the Harappan boy, maybe around 19 years old. We need this particular part completely intact. So fortunately, we had this particular part intact. And then we also had one intact female skeleton. She's around 45 years old, Harappan woman. So we did the reconstruction of these two. We have done, of course, now more than two, but I'll just show you two. So for the reconstruction, what we need two sets of data. One is the matrix data, the measurement of the bones. So that was collected when we were excavating the barriers. And also we need the inner anatomical data, which was obtained by subjecting the skeletal remains to CT scanning. So these data were obtained, and then of course this data was fed in the computer. We have generated the program for this. So gradually it has step by step it has reconstructed. At some stage this flesh and blood was put in, and then skin, and finally this is how the Harappan boy. This is the first stage. Let me tell you that this particular research is very expensive. The research that we have done at this particular stage, this is the first stage. This cost us almost 2 crores for this particular research. And the next research is that in which we can show actually the color of the hair, color of the skin, color of the eyes. So that will be much more expensive. So we are working on that now. So once that is done, perhaps it will be clear. But from this also you can see that the Harappan boy and the modern boy, so much similarity. There's so much continuity. Even this Harappan woman and the modern woman, modern Haryana woman, there is so much continuity. So we have a lot of continuity from the early part, from the beginning of settled life till modern time. So that continuity, in fact, I explain you in material culture, in genetic history, and also in the craniofacial reconstruction that we have done. So finally, we can broadly say that neither early Iranian farmers nor steppes have contributed to the making of South Asian ancestry. It is a very distinct ancestry. No change or breakage in the ancestry of major South Asian population for last 12,000 years, implying neither large-scale migration nor invasion of the so-called Aryans from outside India. People have come from outside. They were merged in the Indian society, but at no stage, neither the genetic history was discontinued or broken, nor we find the elements of the new culture coming in the Indian subcontinent. Usually, when people go from one region to another region, they carry with them the material, maybe cultural elements with them, and also the language with them. For example, people settling in America or UK, you can easily identify the houses of the Indian people there because of the Indian material elements that we find in the houses. So that is the general tendency. Then the different human complexions develop in South Asia due to factors like geography, climate, food habits, differential mixing, etc. Genome has no role in this respect. Then most of the developments such as domestication, settled life, village life, city life, knowledge system, etc. were authored by the indigenous people. The movement of the people and ideas between different continents was happening right from the prehistoric times, resulting in adoption of certain cultural elements and mixing of genes. Indication that most of the South Asians are descendants of the Harappans, and probably there is a continuity in appearances also, implying gene flow from South Asia into Sharisokta and Gonur, a strong case to suggest out of India movement theory. And also we have future plan. In fact, now this is just a beginning. We need more data, in fact, to understand the composition of population at Rakhigarhi itself, because Rakhigarhi was such a big city, mega city. So we need, of course, we are working on that. We are working and collecting more samples. Also, the Harappans were settled in different ecological zones. They were in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, in Sindh also. So we want to get samples from these different regions also. And after Harappans, the Chalcolithic farmers in fact emerged. The farming communities, they continued up to the Harappans also. So they also buried the dead bodies. We have the data from them. We want to analyze. We are also from the early Iron Age, the skeletal data. So to understand how this genetic history has continued from Harappans till modern time, we are working on that part. And we have strong indications at this particular stage. We have not come to the conclusion yet. But there are some, maybe one thing on which I would like to mention, that most of the scholars say that the Indo-European language or the Indo-European speaking people, they came to Indian subcontinent. Now, nobody knows, in fact, where exactly the Indo-European has originated. When it has originated, we have no idea. We have no evidence for that. But my hypothesis now, I'm working on that, of course. This is just a hypothesis that I want to sound to you, that Indo-European languages, the base of the Indo-European language is Sanskrit. And the Harappans were so advanced. I'm sure that they must have spoken maybe early form of Sanskrit. And as they were moving, in fact, outside, as they started moving towards maybe Central Asia, the language also must have traveled. And that one of the evidences that was used by the historians who say that the Aryans came from outside, maybe around 1500 BCE. In Turkey, there's a place called Bogaskoi. And there was a fight between two groups, Hittite and Mitanni. And they had come to the conclusion, some agreement at some stage. And while writing the agreement, there was a mention about the Vedic gods like Indra, Varun, and Agni. My suggestion is that perhaps when Harappan started moving out to Central Asia and to that part, these elements started moving to that part, and they have survived their impact. So Indo-European language, perhaps the base of the Indo-European language must have happened in Indian subcontinent, and to some extent Harappans may be the responsible people for that. Thank you very much.
Hello, wonderful talk. I have a couple of questions. Have you managed to find a particular geographic location for the ancient ancestral South Indians? And secondly, I read recently that the Ghaggar is the paleo-channel of the Satluj River. And this may have been monsoon-fed and not glacier-fed. So what is your understanding?
No, firstly, as far as the exact location of the origin, I think it's not yet pinpointed, because we have used the genetic chronology for tracing the base of that. So that will take some time, but it is believed that that somewhere on the border of Afghanistan and Iran, somewhere that must have happened. So we are working on that. And second question was about
Paleo-channel of
Satluj. Let me tell you, the river which is traced now properly, it emerges in the foothills of the Himalayas in Shivalik, and it comes down, and there are, along with the major river, there are a number of small rivers also noticed by ISRO also. So there are different scholars who believe that who do not believe that this is ancient Saraswati. They say that it is somewhere in Afghanistan, maybe somewhere in other parts. But Rigvedic texts clearly mention about its origin from the Himalayas. Also the Sapta-Sindhu area, that was the area of the Vedic Aryans. So that is the area where the Harappans have flourished. And also it mentioned that the river is flowing through desert also. So through that Rajasthan, third desert, it is also flowing, and it meets the Arabian Sea somewhere. So I think the identification that we have made very close to the reality. That's what it is.
So the very first and major concern about the Iranian farmers now steps up conclusion. I understand you right that that conclusion was based on that one last single sample?
Yes.
Is that statistically sufficient to provide that?
I think now, as I mentioned, that that genetic history is very important. And if you want to really understand, the population genomics, then you don't need, large number of samples for that. So here, our attempt is to understand the population genomics. So there, it is like testing rice, just pick up one grain and you say that the rice is cooked. So it is like that. So at this stage, we feel that, this is, enough to trace the genetic history of the South Asian people.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know about this out of India movement theory that you talk about. So my confusion is about the direction of the movement. I mean, suppose you have some common genes found in Turkmenistan and the Harappan site. How do you know that it's the Harappans that moved in there, not the other way around?
Yeah, Harappans, genetic elements are found in this cultural remains, but not their genetic elements in the Harappan population. In the
No, but let's say at some stage, maybe 6000 BC or something, whatever, you find that the same genes are found in Turkmenistan and in a Harappan site.
See, the dominant gene that is found in Turkmenistan and Iran, they're different from the Harappan genes. But mixing is found there. In fact, maybe 2% of the Harappan genes are found, present in their skeletal remains. So that means, the movement was happening. Suppose, as you say that, maybe if they had come here, then naturally, their elements, maybe 2%, 3%, maybe, genes could have been found in the skeletal remains that we have examined.
Right.
Their genes are not present in the skeletal remains that we have examined. But
that's only one sample that you have, no?
Yeah. But one sample is enough to give this indication.
Right.
So in the beginning only I say that that this is a one major criticism, and I explain that even if we have small sample, we can trace the movement and the genetic history clearly indeed.
Last question from here, but other questions, please, we'll join at the T.
Okay, I have a question that you have seen that during the Harappan civilization, there are other civilizations in India which you showed. So how come only Harappan managed to get throughout the country and not the other civilization? Was there a fight? They won or something? Or
no, I think see, there were hunter-gatherers all over India. Only the hunter-gatherers from the northwest part of the Indian subcontinent, they started, they were the people who started agriculture. And, we have the earliest evidence of that. So from earliest, these people were moving in different directions. So at one stage, they came to maybe in Mid-Ganga Basin. Second stage, they came to maybe Mewar region of Rajasthan and in other parts like that. And most of the other cultures, they flourished only after the Harappans mostly. There were some maybe were contemporary, but a lot of them flourished after the Harappans.
I think we'll have to take a couple of questions. In fact, even Shubha joined just now. But DNA, this is about DNA. So
yes, if you can give me a chance, I can just ask one question.
Sorry?
Are you able to hear me?
Go ahead, please go ahead. Quick question.
Professor Shinde, I have just one question. Did you have a chance to do genetic analysis of barley from that Gagra, Hakra, that some remote region?
The analysis of the people
barley grown where there may not be much genetic mixing.
Sorry, I could not get your question. Can you
see one of the accurate measurement?
While you are talking,
when agriculture started in a region, is the genetic analysis of, as an example, in this case, barley.
Barley.
Yes.
Okay.
If, for instance, that where you plotted the Gagra, Hakra and its tributes, in some place, for instance, that is what in China, in Taiwan hilly region they did.
Mhm.
So they showed that around 4000 BC or so, they had started cultivating rice. Rice is much easier than barley or wheat, but it is worth doing. I have another comment. Before you leave TIFR, if you go to the library, there is a book by Abhyankar, K.D. Abhyankar,
Okay.
where he argued probably around 6500 to 7500 BC, we should have started agriculture, and at that time started tracing the sun, planets, so that you can know when the monsoon starts. If you have chance, go to the library, but since it is not a normal book, they might have now put it away from the library, but it is worth checking his arguments.
Okay, no, I will do that. Only thing that, when I spoke, I said that, I'm actually the evidence, that archaeological evidence and the genetic evidence that we have generated. I'm speaking about that. And there are, some scholars who had already predicted that maybe agriculture started around 7000, 6000 BC. So,
Yes, but the question is that genetic analysis of, in this case, barley, wheat is supposed to be slightly difficult. If one can do barley genetic analysis and show that there is evidence
we can
for
try.
the,
We can try that, yes,
Yeah,
certainly.
maybe.
okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
thanks,
Thank you.
DNA. I think
Thank you.
we can take only one more question between Alak and Shubha. So I will go with Alak because he was raising his hand before. Alak, short and one single question.
I'm told that tooth enamel may reveal the kind of water that the people drank. And it may also reveal some of the kind of food that they may have ate. And so if these individuals were actually traveling, there may be temporal records in the enamel layers of the paths that the individuals took. Is there any effort to trace this in the archaeological remains of the teeth of the inhabitants of this region that you have dealt with?
No, we are working on that. In fact, we are doing a lot of work on the climatic conditions of that period also. And, whatever data that we have from this, we have not fully analyzed yet. So we are working on that part also.
Okay. Shubha,
Satya, sorry, I posted my question on YouTube some time ago.
yeah, Shubha, you please go ahead then quickly. Yeah.
Just how do you deduce skin color from craniofacial reconstruction, or is it the DNA that you use?
Sorry?
How did you predict the skin color using craniofacial reconstruction, or is it the DNA information?
No. I think, we are now, yes, we have to use the DNA data also. And also, this program that, the Koreans have developed. There, if you have maybe the genetic data with us, perhaps with the help of that, we will be able to generate the skin color and also the hair color also. So they have done already, for some Korean mummies in Korea already. So that is what maybe it is in pipeline. We are not worked on that, how we can go about. But that is the next stage that we want to do. For the
You alluded to it and you showed a photograph, so I wondered.
Okay, so should we close this session of Q&A? Thank you very much, Professor Shinde. And I would like to present you on behalf of the asset program organizer this memento, which is commemorating 40 years of the asset program. Thank you very much.
So please, sorry, there are many questions. We know. Please
join us for tea and you can discuss with him.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
On the outside, outside the west end, or in the west end.
Outside.